She left me when I was broke, humiliated me in front of everyone, and ran off with some rich guy. But years later, I made her lose everything and beg me for mercy. My name's Alex Carter, and this is the story of how the love of my life betrayed me when I had nothing, only to come crawling back when I became everything she ever wanted and more. We'd been together for 5 years, through college, part-time jobs, and late-night ramen dinners when neither of us had a penny to our names. Back then, it was us against the world. Or so I thought. Emily was beautiful, smart, and had this way of making everyone around her fall in love with her charm. And I was just, well, me. A scruffy, struggling software engineer trying to get my startup off the ground, working 16-hour days in a tiny apartment with peeling wallpaper and a barely functioning laptop. But I believed in myself, and I believed in us. Until one night, everything changed. It was a Saturday evening, and I'd just lost a huge investor deal that I'd been counting on. The disappointment was crushing, but I still made my way home with a cheap bottle of wine, thinking we could laugh about it and plan the next move together. But when I walked through the door, I found Emily sitting on the couch with her bags packed. Her expression was cold, distant, not like the girl I knew. Before I could ask what was wrong, she stood up and said, "I can't do this anymore, Alex. I need more. I deserve better." I was speechless, my throat dry, my heart pounding. Then she dropped the bomb. She'd met someone else. Some rich guy named Blake, who drove a Porsche and owned a beach house. She didn't even have the decency to sugarcoat it. "Blake can give me everything you can't. And honestly, Alex, you're holding me back." She walked out that night, leaving me standing there with the wine bottle still in my hand and my world shattered into a million pieces. The days after that felt like a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and every time I opened my phone, there she was, posting pictures with Blake at fancy restaurants, on boats, in designer clothes. It was like she wanted to rub it in my face. Friends pitied me, some disappeared, and the few that stuck around told me I needed to move on. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I proved to Emily, to Blake, and to everyone else who ever doubted me that I was worth something, that I wasn't the loser she made me out to be. So I worked. I worked harder than I thought was humanly possible. I coded for 20 hours a day, living off energy drinks and microwave noodles. I barely left my apartment. I turned off social media, cut ties with everyone, and poured every ounce of pain and anger into building my company. Failures kept coming, but I learned from them. I started freelancing, taking on every miserable coding gig I could find just to keep the lights on. Little by little, things began to shift. My skills improved. My network grew. And one night, after nearly a year of isolation, I launched a new app, one I knew was going to change everything. It wasn't overnight, but downloads started trickling in. Then hundreds, then thousands. Investors began calling me this time. And within a year, I landed a multi-million-dollar acquisition deal with a major tech giant. I went from broke to millionaire in what felt like a blink. I moved into a penthouse, bought the car of my dreams, and started getting invited to the very parties I used to see Emily post about. And as fate would have it, our paths crossed again sooner than I expected. It was at a charity gala. I'd been invited as a guest speaker, one of those success story types they like to parade around. And there she was, standing by the bar, her hair curled perfectly, still every bit as stunning as I remembered. But something was different. There was a tightness in her eyes, a hint of desperation beneath the makeup. Blake wasn't with her. Rumor had it he'd dumped her for someone younger. And she was barely scraping by, working dead-end jobs and couch surfing with friends. She saw me, and her jaw literally dropped. "Alex," she stammered, blinking as if she couldn't believe it. I gave her a small, polite smile. "Emily," I nodded. She launched into this awkward, rambling speech about how proud she was of me, how she always knew I'd make it, how tough things had been lately for her. I played along, pretending to care, while inside I was savoring every second. Because this was the moment I'd waited for. But I wasn't done yet. I had a plan to take back everything she'd taken from me. And then some. Over the next few weeks, Emily started texting me, calling, trying to meet up. I kept my responses cold, distant. She dropped hints about how lonely she was, how tough the world was without someone like me. Then came the sob stories, how she'd lost her job, how rent was overdue, how Blake had left her penniless. It was all too perfect. I invited her to dinner one night, at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, making sure she saw the kind of life I was living now. She showed up dressed to kill, hoping to impress. I kept the conversation light, let her talk about herself, and when the check came, I paid without hesitation, flashing my black card. As we stepped outside, she gave me this look, the same one she used to give me before things went south. "Alex," she murmured, placing a hand on my arm. I was thinking, maybe we could give us another chance. I acted surprised, pretending to hesitate. "I don't know, Em. A lot's changed." She leaned in closer. "I've changed too. I made a mistake, Alex. I see that now. You're the one I should have been with." I almost laughed, but I held it in. This was exactly what I wanted. Because what Emily didn't know was that the company she'd just applied to for a job, desperate and broke, was mine, and I was about to make her life a living hell. The moment Emily asked for another chance, a wave of emotions hit me all at once. Anger, vindication, a little bit of pity, but mostly clarity. This wasn't about cruelty or punishing her for what felt like a lifetime ago. It was about finally closing a chapter that had haunted me for years. I took a deep breath, looked her in the eyes, and smiled just enough to keep her hoping. "Maybe," I told her, my voice measured calm. I told her I'd think about it, let her sweat a little, and in the meantime, I set the stage for what would be a lesson she'd never forget. Not the kind of petty revenge you read about online. No, this was about giving her a taste of the consequences she once so easily brushed aside. Over the next week, Emily started texting me constantly, telling me about every miserable thing in her life. Her apartment lease was ending, her friends were kicking her out, and every job interview she went to led to a dead end. It was obvious she was sinking, desperate to latch onto the success she'd abandoned. And that's when the perfect opportunity fell right into my lap. My company, the one she'd once laughed at, had an opening for a receptionist at our downtown office. A simple position, but with a salary decent enough for someone down on their luck. And guess who applied for it? Not realizing it was my business? That's right, Emily. She must have been so desperate she didn't even notice my name on the company listing, or maybe she thought it was a coincidence. Either way, I had my assistant schedule her interview for the following Friday. I made sure to be there personally. The moment she walked into that office, dressed in cheap, worn clothes and fake confidence, her eyes met mine, and you could see her heart sink into her stomach. She tried to mask her shock, plastering on a forced smile. "David, I didn't realize this was your company," she stammered. I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever, and pretended to be surprised. "Emily, what a coincidence," I said smoothly, watching her squirm. I could have ended it there, told her to leave, but that wasn't the point. The real victory wasn't turning her away. It was showing her exactly what she missed out on. So I conducted the interview like any other. I asked her about her skills, her experience, what she could bring to the company. The whole time, she was visibly nervous, her voice shaky, her hands trembling. I could see the regret in her eyes, the shame of knowing she was sitting across from the man she once discarded like trash, now in a position to decide her future. When it was over, I told her we'd be in touch. She left without saying much, her shoulders slumped, the door closing softly behind her. I didn't intend to give her the job, not because I wanted to crush her, but because it would have been cruel to trap her in a place where she'd have to see my success every day, a constant reminder of what she lost. Instead, I made sure she got a polite rejection email that evening, thanking her for her time and wishing her luck in her job search. But my revenge didn't end there. A few days later, I bought the very apartment complex she was living in, not to evict her or anything vindictive, but to renovate the building and improve it for the other tenants. Unfortunately for Emily, with the upgrades came higher rent, and I knew she wouldn't be able to afford the new rates. She received a notice about the increase, and just like that, she was on the verge of homelessness again. And still, I didn't kick her out personally. I let the natural consequences of her past decisions catch up to her. Karma was doing the heavy lifting. I was just watching. A month later, I bumped into her at a coffee shop near my office. She looked exhausted, thinner, and desperate. She tried to strike up a conversation, bringing up old memories like they meant something now. I listened politely, but kept it short. When she finally asked, "Do you think there's any chance for us?" I gave her an honest answer. I told her I'd moved on, that I was happy now, and that I hoped she could find her own path too. No anger, no bitterness, just closure. I watched her nod, her eyes glossy with unshed tears, and walk away into the crowded street, finally realizing that some doors, once closed, never open again. And you know what? That was enough. I didn't need to ruin her life or make her suffer endlessly. The world had a way of balancing itself out, and Emily had already paid a steep enough price for the choices she made. I left the past where it belonged, and with that final chapter closed, I walked back into my office, feeling lighter than I had in years, ready to live the life I built for myself. Without resentment, without revenge fantasies, just peace. A few months passed after that last encounter with Emily, and life had never felt better. My business was thriving. My circle was filled with loyal, uplifting people, and for the first time in a long time, my past didn't haunt me. I thought that would be the last time I'd see or hear from Emily, but fate, as it often does, had other plans. One rainy Thursday afternoon, my assistant buzzed my office, saying a woman named Emily was at the front desk. Before I could even respond, she added, "She looks rough, sir. Says she really needs to talk to you." I sighed, running a hand down my face. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I told her to send Emily up, and a few minutes later, there she was, standing in my office doorway, drenched from the rain, hair clinging to her face, eyes red and swollen. She didn't look like the confident, smug woman who'd once left me for a richer man. She looked like someone completely broken. She stood there in silence for a moment before speaking. I'm sorry, David. I don't have anywhere else to go," she whispered. I gestured for her to sit down, offering her a towel from the bathroom. She wiped her face and sat, fidgeting with her hands. She told me everything, how after leaving me for Eric, she discovered he was cheating on her within months. He drained her savings, kicked her out, and left her in debt. Every friend she thought she had turned their backs on her. Her family refused to help, claiming she made her choices and would have to live with them. The job market had been brutal, and with no one to rely on, she'd been sleeping on couches and in shelters. And now, she was here, asking me for a job, for anything, even if it was cleaning floors. I listened quietly, no smugness, no satisfaction, just a strange kind of pity. It was clear Emily had finally hit rock bottom, but something in her eyes told me she wasn't looking for pity. She was looking for a lifeline. I thought about it for a moment. I wasn't about to hire her at my company. It wouldn't be fair to my team or to myself. But I wasn't cruel, either. So I offered her a contact at a local community shelter where they helped people get back on their feet, with resources for housing, job placement, and counseling. At first, she looked crushed, as if she'd hoped I'd offer her a job right there on the spot. But when I explained that this was a place that could genuinely help her rebuild her life without depending on people from her past, she finally nodded, tears spilling down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. I gave her the number and address, and she left quietly. I didn't hear from her again for several months. In that time, life carried on. I expanded the business, traveled, and eventually met someone new. Sarah was kind, grounded, and everything Emily wasn't. She cared about people, not bank accounts. And for the first time, I understood what real love looked like. About 8 months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting. I opened it, and inside was a note from Emily. She wrote about how she'd gone to the shelter, gotten into a program, and was now working at a local bookstore. She had a small apartment, was attending therapy, and was finally learning to live without chasing money or status. The last line stuck with me. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to thank you for not kicking me when I was down. You gave me a chance to fix myself." I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. It wasn't closure because closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide for yourself. And in that moment, I realized I'd found mine. My revenge hadn't been about destroying Emily's life. It was about showing her what it meant to value people over money, to recognize her mistakes, and to rebuild without shortcuts. In the end, karma handled the heavy lifting, and I simply lived my life better than before. That, I learned, was the sweetest revenge of all. And for anyone watching, if you've ever been left behind, doubted, or discarded by someone who thought you weren't enough, let them go. Success isn't about getting even. It's about becoming so good, so grounded, and so at peace with yourself that their absence no longer matters. The best revenge is a life well lived. And that's how my story ends. From heartbreak to success, from being dumped for a richer guy to becoming a millionaire on my own terms. And when the past came crawling back, I didn't need to destroy it. I let it see what it missed, and then I moved on. Thanks for sticking around for this one. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe for more jaw-dropping real-life revenge stories, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Trust me, you won't want to miss these. I'll see you in the next one.